Hello to our freaky family. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Kandi.
And this is Sips of Crime. Welcome back, everybody, to Sips of Crime, your favorite true crime podcast.
It better be. Just kidding, you guys.
You normally say it has to be.
Oh, I do. I always say whoop whoop. I've been trying to stop doing that.
Oh, please. We hope you guys enjoyed the last episode, and we are so excited to bring you episode number 31 today. I've got quite an exciting episode for you guys, but before we get started on all of that, Kandi, what have you been up to? What are you doing? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What are you reading?
I'm trying to read The Good Daughter. Is that what it's called?
Oh, I've heard good things about that. Not crazy about it so far.
Let me make sure that's the name before I go over here talking about it. So, okay, one, it's a very long book. It's like 400 and something. Yes, it's The Good Daughter. It's by Karen Slaughter, and it's long. It's like 500 and some pages.
Wow.
But like I usually, even if I don't want to finish a book, I will finish it just because I want to know what's happened. I want to know what happens. But this one, I'm struggling to finish. Like, I don't want to go pick it up. It's kind of drawn out. Mm-hmm. It's just, it hasn't grasped my interest. But I'm going to try to finish it. And then I did, however, do I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCarthy.
You did suggest that one to me. I remember.
I did that one on audio. I do feel like it should have like a trigger warning of, hey, this is what I talk about. Just because I feel like she talks about like eating disorders, and I was listening to it while I was doing my calorie stuff, and I'm like, I feel like that could like trigger some stuff, but there are some chapters do not listen to around your children, but just because she talks about sexual things. Yeah, but it was pretty good. Like I wanted to hear about it, so I do recommend reading or listening to that one. And it's actually if you do the audiobook, it's read by her. So that's really nice.
I love those.
Yes.
Those are my favorite.
Yes.
A lot of like, I don't necessarily want to just throw the genre, together, but a lot of self-help books. I really, really like it whenever the author actually reads it on the audiobook, because I'm much more prone to audiobooks than you are. Yes. I prefer that method over sitting down with a paperback, or hardback, but it just makes it so much more personal whenever it's coming from the author itself, and you can hear the emotion, and I feel like you just get such a better sense of what they're going through and what they're telling you about, and just the storyline overall. And if you guys aren't aware, Kandi and I are avid readers. Kandi prefers a paperback or a hardback book. She likes the pages. I do prefer audiobooks, so I do subscribe to Audible. But on our monthly newsletter on our website, sipsofcrime.com, we do actually have a current read from a book that we've recently read that we're suggesting to you guys, so you guys can go on there and kind of check out what we're into at that current moment, what we might be suggesting to you guys. And
there's a lot here recently. I will do one audiobook and one physical book. Kind
of switch it up a little bit.
Well, yeah, and usually I'm like not mentally prepared to like separate the two, but I think I'm doing pretty good. Knock on wood. I did start the Girls Weekend. I can't tell you anything about it because I only did chapter 1. So I'll have to refresh you on that one.
Yeah, audiobooks are something that I really enjoy. I use 2 different companies. I do subscribe to Audible. I do the $16 subscription once a month, and it's well worth it because a lot of the books that I end up getting are more than $16, so you do end up saving a little bit of money there. But then I also found a company called Chirp, and it has audiobooks on like a discount. The selection isn't quite as vast as Audible, but it does have a really, really good selection, and they will have like sales. So I've gotten some of my audiobooks. I'm a huge Ellen Hildebrand fan. I've gotten some of her books for as low as $1.99.
Is that a monthly subscription?
No, it is not subscription. You pay per book, which I love. So, like, if I finish an audiobook off of Audible for my subscription, then I might jump over to Chirp and find, like, a cheap book that's been on my list and see if it's on sale or, and I might pay $14 for that book. But it's still, like, a $25 book.
Yeah.
So those are just a couple of audiobook options that I would suggest if you guys are into audiobooks. I don't know how this turned into a book recommendation, but here we are. And you actually subscribe to Book of the Month Club.
I did, yes. I do have Book of the Month. I can I'll send you my little referral link.
Can we post that on the Instagram?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll post her referral link for Book of the Month Club on our Instagram, and I might have one for Audible as well.
I will say, Book of the Month, it is, I do like it because you don't have to get something every month. Mm-hmm. It is a subscription, and you pay, they actually just came out with 3 different
tiers,
subscription tiers, and you can make a to be read list, like if you see things that you want to read, or like they have a bunch of, and they also do, they have a podcast out, and they just recently added audiobooks to their list. But I think I pay like $15.99 a month. Your first month, I think, is like $5.99 if you go through the referral program.
And they are hardback books.
I mean, hardback books.
Yeah, and they're really nice. She has her own little bookshelf and a cabinet that she's... Yeah, it's great. They're really quality.
So you get 5 or 7 different options every month. And it's not the same genre or anything like that. You can have like fiction, you can have fantasy, you can have horror, you can have crime, you can have, anything like that, romance. Then if you're not into the monthly book, you can do a member's choice, which is 4 or 5 books that are a different option. And then if you don't like any of those books, you can skip the month.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Now, you still pay for it, for that monthly thing, but say next month, they have 2 different books you want, or you want your monthly book and one on your to-be-read list.
Gotcha.
You can get that one. It'll say it's for free, like one of your books is for free. Technically, it's not because you paid for it.
Paid for it last month.
But they're, like you said, they're hardback books that you would originally
good quality books.
$25, $26 for.
Right.
And you can look, like, by genre, you can look by month, it's really nice. And I like the fact that you can skip it.
Yeah, that's nice. So yeah, like I said, we really enjoy our reads. And if you guys are wondering what we are, into, you can definitely jump over to our website and check out our monthly newsletter and kind of see what we've been into. So
what have you been into other than books?
I have been into traveling here recently. My daughter is on a competition gymnastics team. She started this year and, she started last year. But her first competition season started in January. And so I actually just returned home from Pigeon Forge.
Nice.
On one of her competitions. And, she did really, really well. She actually, she only placed 3rd in, 1 or 2 of her categories, but she did place in more than that. It just wasn't the top 3. But she's just so, oh my gosh, they're so much fun. And, she's only 8. And so we get to go and we get to see all of the other little girls compete, and they have all of their little floor routines.
Oh, cute.
And they're so much fun. So we ended up making a little weekend out of it. We went to the Dolly Parton Stampede because she's super into horses. And that was a really fun evening, and we got to see all of the horses and stuff like that, and we did some shopping, and so yeah, we just had a really great weekend, but I am glad to be home.
I bet so.
I love traveling, but I'm also a huge fan of getting home.
Yes.
So I'm glad that we're home. But we're going to be back on the road in 2 weeks for Myrtle Beach.
Yes.
For her next competition. So you guys just keep me and my family in your thoughts. Yes, I actually have something for you that I meant to give you on our last episode, and I forgot.
What?
It was a little Valentine's Day present.
Oh, cute. You didn't have to get me anything. Oh, my God. No, you didn't. Where the heck did you find this?
Walmart.
No way.
Yep.
Y'all, This is the biggest Ferrero Rocher I've ever seen. It is as big as my palm and almost as big as my hand.
Yeah.
Like it's half the size of it's huge.
Yes, it's very big, and so I got each one of us one because we deserve it.
I am so excited.
Yes.
Screw the calories today. I'm eating
Enjoy.
this. If I eat this whole thing in one sitting, is that bad?
No, it is not. There's nothing
You're gonna
wrong
have to
with
post
that.
how big this is.
Please take a like a picture of.
It's
like,
bigger than the wine glass that we use.
Oh goodness.
So cute. Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank
very,
you.
very late.
I didn't give anything.
It's okay. It's totally fine. You bought me a new wine opener for...
That does not count. That does not
What
count.
holiday was that?
I don't even know if that was a holiday.
I think it was Christmas.
I don't know. You just said you needed one, so...
Yeah, mine broke, and she showed up to recording with a brand new one. It was fantastic. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with our episode, and we actually have another iced.
Yes. Well, I figured we needed to go ahead and do this one before it's not winter.
So we are getting out of the winter months, so we wanted to go out with a bang.
This is a iced gingerbread spiked latte.
And we really enjoyed the last iced latte that we had on this podcast.
What was that one? A mocha? They have like a peppermint. They have a bunch of these. So of course this one tells you that you can enjoy it over ice. You can add 1 part vodka and 2 parts iced gingerbread for a wonderful martini.
Oh, and martini. I love that.
You serve it chilled, of course. And then it is 14% alcohol.
Woo!
It smells like alcohol.
Cheers.
Oh,
Yeah, that's dangerous.
that's delicious.
That is like winter in a cup. Oh, wow.
This is...
I love this
good.
so much because the gingerbread aspect of it is not super sweet.
No, and I feel like it's more of a, it's not like a gingerbread, but it's like a cinnamony.
Yes, it tastes very similar to like a cinnamon dolce.
It does smell very, like, strong of alcohol, but you cannot taste it.
Mm-mm.
And you know what would be good? If you took a little bit of chocolate and put it in there, too.
Yep. Like swirled the chocolate around the glass before you poured it in there with a little bit of ice.
Mm.
Yep, that's perfect. Yep, 10 out of 10. Would recommend.
Oh, yeah, we are bypassing the 5. This is a... Oh, this is, like, perfect.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a 5-star there, for sure. Also, I don't think that you need the vodka
Hell no.
to put that over. If you wanted to put that in a martini glass with a little bit of chocolate sauce, you would not need the extra vodka.
I mean, if you want to get tore up from the floor up, you put your vodka in there.
It's alcoholic enough, for sure.
It's 14%.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic.
What do you have for me today, other than this wonderful, huge-ass Ferrero Rocher?
So, I actually have a story for you today about a man named Fritz and a woman named Susie Q.
Her legit name is Susie Q.
No.
Oh, that's her nickname. Okay.
So grab a glass
Grab a friend.
and let's dive in. Susie Sharp Newsom and Frederick Fritz Klenner Jr. were born into wealthy and influential families. Susie, on Christmas Eve, December 24th of 1947, was born, and Fritz on July 31st of 1952, both in Reidsville, North Carolina. They weren't especially close growing up, despite being first cousins. They grew up in different towns and had different interests and were also 5 years apart. Susie, who was nicknamed Susie Q, was named after her aunt, Susie Sharp, who was the county's first elected female Chief Justice of State Supreme Court judge. So, pretty big deal. Lot to live up to.
Mm-hmm.
Judge Susie Sharp had 2 other sisters, Florence, who was Susie Q's mom, and Annie. Susie Q was pretty, smart, and treated like an absolute princess of her family. Some called her spoiled. Her temper tantrums were sometimes so dramatic that her mother ended up having to douse her with cold water to bring her out of them. Bit of a drama queen.
Oh, okay. So, like, I'm sorry. I pictured her spraying her like a cat with a spray bottle.
I pictured a bucket. So
pictured spraying her. I was like, maybe that'll work for my 2-year-old. Yeah. I'm not going to spray my 2-year-old with a bottle of water like a cat. I'm just saying.
As she grew older, she carried herself with the regal presence of a princess and even fixated on the British royal family. After enrolling in Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, the other students regarded her somewhat of a fraternity sweetheart. As I stated earlier, Fritz was also born into the same wealthy family. Annie, who was Susie Q's aunt, was Fritz's mom.
Okay.
So, they were first cousins. Fritz's father was actually a doctor, Dr. Frederick Klenner Sr., and went by Fred, which is why his youngest son, who was a junior, went by Fritz. So, going forward, we've got Fritz and Fred.
Okay.
Fred is the dad. He was well known, but a controversial doctor with an office in downtown Reidsville. Some referred to him as a bit of a quack. Despite his medical degree, Fred believed that large doses of vitamin C could cure polio and multiple sclerosis. Yeah. In fact, on May 23rd of 1946, Dr. Klenner made national headlines when he delivered the world's first set of surviving identical quadruplets, the Fultz sisters, at the Annie Penn Hospital in Reidsville. In his opinion, Klenner attributed their survival to massive doses of vitamins that he had administered to the babies while under his medical care. So, he was a bit of a loon.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. And people noticed this. So, there were some...
I'm sorry, but yes, vitamins are good for you. They do a lot of things. But I don't think that contributed into the triplets surviving.
No, I don't believe it did either. They were quadruplets.
Oh, sorry.
By the way. Quadruplets. But no, I agree with you. And vitamin C certainly doesn't cure polio or multiple sclerosis. But the town was kind of divided. Some people legitimately thought he was a crazy person. And then the other side actually thought he was a genius. So you've got kind of a divided situation going on. The doctor doled out affirmations and disapproval to Fritz in equal measure. Fritz was expected to earn straight A's, obey his father, never make a misstep. As a child, Fritz never strayed far from his demanding father. He often went to the office and on hunting trips with his dad. So he would go to the doctor's office while his dad worked. When he failed to meet the high standards expected of him, his dad would withdraw his attention from him. And in Fritz's mind, this was considered one of the hardest punishments.
Why would you do that to your kid?
I don't know. It's a terrible way to bring up a child. After graduating from Reidsville High School, Fritz attended the University of Mississippi in Oxford, but he never actually graduated. When his father demanded to see his diploma, Fritz lied, claiming that someone holding a grudge against him at school kept him from finishing and promised to straighten everything out, calling it a simple misunderstanding.
What does that have to do with you not?
Kandi, the wild ride I am about to take you on is going to blow your mind. Fritz pretended to straighten things out, pretending to graduate, and then proceeded to pretend to enroll in medical school at Duke University.
How do you pretend?
I'm about to tell you. His father could not have been prouder, since that is actually where Frederick Sr. had gotten his medical degree.
Oh, yeah.
It was at Duke. While Fritz was there, he met and was engaged to a young woman named Ruth Dupree, but called off their engagement saying his father had diagnosed him with stomach cancer. But a year later, claimed that his father's vitamin C treatment had cured him, and they actually got married on December of 1978.
Okay.
Now, during this time, Susie Q's life at least on the surface, was running a little bit more smoothly. While at Wake Forest, she had met a handsome basketball player named Tom Lynch. Tom had been born into a wealthy family as well, and had lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and was quite flattered by the attention of Susie. His mother, Dolores, on the other hand, was not very approving of this relationship. In fact, she didn't like Susie at all, and as the relationship progressed, Dolores urged Tom not to propose, but Tom did not listen. Despite the fighting on the day of the wedding with her future mother-in-law, Tom and Susie did get married on June 6th of 1970 during a quite fancy ceremony in Winston-Salem. The newlyweds immediately moved to Lexington, Kentucky, where Tom had been accepted into dental school at the University of Kentucky. Between his studies and her job at a research firm, the couple spent little time together and even less time with Dolores, his mother, who they saw once in 4 years, despite living just 85 miles away. The couple moved to Beaufort, South Carolina, when Tom joined the Navy Reserves, and their first son, John, was born in August of 74, and their second son, Jim, was born March of 76, and a few months after Jim's birthday, Tom set up a dental practice in Albuquerque. Susie never liked it there. She resented being stuck home with 2 small sons while Tom devoted countless hours to establishing his practice and often talked about her prominent, wealthy family back in North Carolina. She criticized the locals for their lack of culture and fashion sense. Unfortunately, she was also known to be abusive to her sons, even putting Jim in the hospital at one point.
What the heck?
A neighbor considered reporting to the local authorities, but never did. Tensions between Susie and Tom grew each month in Albuquerque, and their fights became more frequent. And in July of 1979, Susie and the boys moved back to North Carolina under the impression that she was going to be spending some time with her grandfather, whose health was deteriorating out in Greensboro. Susie Q was finally back in North Carolina, where she could reap the benefits of her family's wealth. Tom signed a separation agreement giving her full custody of John, who was 4 at the time, and Jim, who was 3 at the time, and Susie never returned to Albuquerque. But by June of 1980, Susie had grown restless again, and by the end of the year, she and the boys moved to China, where she taught English for 6 months. Yep.
You go from Greensboro, North Carolina to China.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Don't worry, though. This unfortunately didn't suit her either. She complained about the air pollution and the, quote, filthy homes, unquote, she shared with local Chinese families. So they actually ended up returning to Greensboro. Upon their arrival home, Susie's mother found a thin, weak, and demoralized version of her daughter and insisted that she see Dr. Fred Klenner for treatment.
Oh, God.
And this is where Susie Q and Fritz path truly cross. Fritz, who was supposedly a medical student at Duke University, remember?
Yeah.
Was actually going to extreme lengths to convince the world that not only was he enrolled, but was also considered a prodigy at Duke. He told his father he was taking part in important blood research at Duke and was actually staying in an apartment in Durham, where he stayed Monday through Friday to, quote, attend classes and perform rounds at the hospital, unquote. And other days he worked with his father at the office in Reedsville, assisting his father with patients. Okay, so
How can he even practice?
Let's just give a quick recap here, okay? The man never graduated the first time. Okay. Then pretended to enroll in the medical program at Duke, but never actually did. And is currently living in an apartment doing literally nothing Monday through Thursday. And then seeing his father's patients at an actual doctor's office that his dad owned.
And he's not licensed.
Not at all.
To practice. And
Not at
these
all.
people are, like, going to see him for his medical...
Yes, and calling him Fritz and a young Dr. Klenner. Okay, so that's where we're at. Okay. He always carried a medical bag, dispensing, quote, stress pills, unquote, offering various injections, and, of course, pushing his father's beloved vitamin C, which...
Injections of what?
It didn't say. Which Fritz, quote, prescribed in massive doses. He also developed quite a habit for lying about other things as well. He became friendly with the owners of a gun shop in Hillsborough. He told them far-fetched stories about rescuing his father from certain death. In another story, he heroically fought behind enemy lines in Vietnam as a Green Beret and confided in those closest to him about his dangerous undercover work with the CIA.
Oh my God.
So he's not a doctor, nor is he in medical school, and he's also a pathological liar. Not in the CIA, was never a Green Beret. None of that.
Oh God.
Lies. All lies. None of this, of course, was true, but was quite successful at enticing one Miss Susie Q.
Time out. Time out. I was taking a sip. No, wait a minute. Why are we enticing our family members? They're related.
They are. They're first cousins.
I don't give a crap.
Well, no, you have your cousins, and then you have your first cousins.
No,
sweetheart, that's not how that works.
It's not.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Soon after reconnecting with Fred at Klenner's office, Fritz and Susie began spending time together, and eventually almost all of their time together. On December 21st of 1982, Susie and Tom's divorce was finalized. Fritz and Ruth had also split up due to his many affairs with other women, and he started spending most nights at Susie's apartment off Friendly Avenue near Guilford College. He took her boys camping and told them to call him Papa.
Papa?
Papa. Family and friends pretended not to notice, but the obvious first cousins were lovers. This, unfortunately, would not be the worst part of our story, and things are about to get weirder.
Oh, God. I mean, I want to say how can it get weirder, but
I'm only on page 2.
I'd see that.
Fritz became Susie's protector by convincing her that good old Tom was plotting to kidnap the boys, and Susie responded by limiting their contact with Tom, or at the very least, closely monitoring it. She often refused to let them talk to Tom when he called from Albuquerque each week, and when they did speak to their dad, Fritz recorded the calls. Susie discarded the gifts that Tom and his mother sent the boys unopened. Even packages of baked goods from Dolores were suspect. Susie would say they might contain poison. The visitation agreement allowed Tom a few holiday visits and several weeks in the summer, but nothing more, and Susie refused to allow him any more access than their agreement required. When Tom did see his sons, they were thin, withdrawn, fearful, and loaded down with large quantities of vitamin C that Fritz insisted they take with them to Albuquerque. Tom decided to take legal action to boost his visitation rights. In May of 1984, Dr. Fred Klenner died from heart disease at Moorhead Hospital in Eden.
His vitamin C didn't help him.
It says that he died in Moorhead Hospital in Eden and not Annie Penn Hospital in Reedsville because of an ongoing grudge the doctor held from his early practice. And I put in my notes, I guess his vitamin C treatments finally proved unsuccessful.
I can't.
Fritz sobbed as he told a large crowd gathering in the waiting room about his dramatic but unsuccessful attempt to save his father's life. One family friend remembers thinking Klenner's death would surely send Fritz into a spiral. As Tom's custody battle made its way through the courts, Susie's paranoia grew. She resented the time Tom and his new wife, Kathy, spent with the boys, especially when they visited Dolores in Kentucky. On July 24th of 1984, John and Jim were with Tom and Kathy in Albuquerque and just days away from a trip to see Dolores when Tom received devastating news. Dolores and his sister, Janie Lynch, had been brutally killed, shot multiple times at close range with a high-powered weapon. Kentucky police even told him that it looked like a professional hit, but Susie refused Tom's request to extend the boys' stay in New Mexico so that they could grieve as a family. As investigators in Kentucky searched for clues, Tom received a condolence note from Susie's mother, Florence, and used it as an opportunity to explain his court's decision. All he wanted, he wrote in a letter to the Newsomes, was a normal, healthy relationship with his boys. He wrote, quote, I believe that in order for children of divorce to come out of the experience as well as possible, it is vital for them to have strong relationships with their father as well as their mother, unquote. Florence wrote back, yes, we agree it is very important that the boys have a strong and good relationship with their father. We hope you and Susie can have good communication so the boys will not play one parent against the other, unquote. Tom and Kathy began communicating regularly with Florence, who sent pictures and described visits with John and Jim. The Newsomes agreed to testify about the visitation on Tom's behalf, which of course enraged Susie, who was growing more fearful each day of losing the boys. So, at this point, we're starting to see some mental illness come into play. Susie's very paranoid. She's constantly thinking that, poor Tom, who sounds to me like a pretty good guy, who's just trying to live his life and do the best he can in life, who wants a relationship with his boys. This paranoia that Susie has is making her think that Tom's only goal is to take the boys away from her. Which it doesn't sound like that's what it is at all. I mean...
Right, he's just trying to be in their life.
He's trying to be in their life, and he wants them to be in his life, and wants Susie to be in their life. It doesn't sound to me from, this exchange of letters with her mother that he had any intention whatsoever of taking these boys away from her.
Right. He was literally just trying to make it equal.
Exactly. Susie told relatives Tom had mob connections, which explained why his mother and sister were killed in the manner that they were, and said that she knew this to be true because Fritz was in the CIA.
Oh, jeez Louises.
Yep.
Even if he was in the CIA, what does that got to do with the mob? Does he know that they killed him? Then if he does, then why are... Okay, Susie Q.
Fritz had convinced another person that he worked for the CIA as well. Ian Perkins, a 21-year-old from a prominent Reidsville family and a student at Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia. Ian had known Fritz all of his life and even looked up to him. They decided they had a lot in common and that they shared a love of America, a hatred of communism, and a fascism with guns. Ian had told Fritz he longed for a career in government intelligence after college. In the spring of 1985, Fritz appealed to that desire when he told Ian about his, quote, work, unquote, with the CIA. Fritz needed Ian's help with a covert mission to kill foreign drug traffickers. It was a tryout of sorts, if you will, Fritz told him. He would evaluate Ian's performance to determine whether he was worthy of other missions, and, of course, Ian agreed. Fritz picked the date, the weekend of May 17th through the 19th of 1985. At 11 p.m. Saturday on May 18th, Ian dropped Fritz off in the Old Town neighborhood of Winston-Salem. And just after midnight, Fritz met back up with Ian after completing the mission that night. The three people were killed half a mile from the drop-off point, Bob and Florence Newsome, and Bob's mother, Hattie. So Florence is now dead, along with her husband, Bob, and Bob's mom. Florence is Susie's mother. When questioned by the Winston-Salem Police Department, Fritz had used Perkins as an alibi when they questioned him. Fritz and Perkins had planned for such a scenario and had rehearsed their story. They were camping together in the Virginia mountains that weekend. But when the officers pressed Ian for information, he tearfully confessed the truth. He wasn't supposed to tell anyone, but he was assisting Fritz on a covert CIA mission. On Saturday, May 18th, he drove Fritz to Winston-Salem to kill communists. They were raiding an American arsenal, smuggling the arms to South America and trading them for large quantity of drugs, which they sold as a profit. The Russian KGB was involved. He told them that the mission just so happened to take place on the same weekend and half a mile from where the Newsomes were killed. That was just a coincidence. The detectives recognized Ian's gullibility, realized he had been duped. They decided to share some information with him. Fritz was never a doctor or a CIA agent. He was a suspect in the Newsome homicide. In fact, he may have killed Tom Lynch's mother and sister back in 1984. Ian, sickened by his inadvertent role in the Newsome slayings, agreed to wear a wire and try to elicit a confession from Fritz. He met with Fritz on June 1st and June 2nd. Both times he said police were questioning him about the Newsome's death. Both times he asked Fritz whether he had anything to do with them. Fritz stuck to his CIA story. He gave Ian several pills with his medicine bag to help him stay calm under investigation. About 1 p.m. on Monday, June 3rd of 1985, Ian met with Fritz for a third time, agreeing to wear a wire. He climbed into the passenger seat of Fritz's Blazer and was terrified that Fritz would see the wire and kill him. Instead, Fritz came as close as he ever would to confessing. A statement recorded by the wire. Quote, "I'll write a paper saying you were not knowingly involved, that you believed you were on a covert mission for the government. I've got things to do. I won't see you again." Unquote. What poor Ian didn't know was that during this whole conversation, Fritz was actually sitting on top of a homemade bomb he had hidden beneath his Blazer seat.
Oh my God.
Yeah. After Ian left, Fritz arrived at Susie's apartment off Friendly Avenue about 2 p.m. Meanwhile, the Forsyth County District Attorney authorized his arrest based on his near confession to Ian. Soon, law enforcement personnel, and lots of them, had the apartment surrounded from a distance. At this point, the Kentucky State Police had also teamed up with the Forsyth County Sheriff's Department since they believed Fritz to be responsible for the deaths of Tom's mother, Dolores, and his sister, Jamie, as well. Agents with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigations were on the ground and in the air. All they needed was a uniformed Greensboro officer to stand by during the arrest. Tommy Dennis, a squad leader who was near Greensboro Coliseum on Lee Street, radioed in that he was on his way. He knew no details, only that he would be helping with other law enforcement approach a felony suspect. Tommy headed towards Friendly Avenue as detectives remained at the apartment, watching Fritz and Susie load the Blazer with what looked like camping supplies. John, Jim, and Susie's chow had all gotten into the back seat, while Susie got into the passenger seat next to Fritz, when they headed east onto Friendly Avenue. No one could have anticipated what happened next. Fritz approached the stretch of Friendly that intersected with New Garden and College Road. A Greensboro detective pulled in front of the Blazer while other officers materialized and waved for Fritz to stop. An SBI agent held up his badge for Fritz to see. Fritz pulled the Blazer onto the curb, drove around the police car, and continued east. Traffic continued to flow through Friendly. Thomas Dennis, in his squad car, approached the Blazer from the west. He flipped on his blue lights, still not knowing the specifics of the operation. He tried to make a U-turn to get behind the Blazer. Suddenly, two unmarked cars, one from the SBI and another Mustang driven by a Forsyth County Sheriff's deputy, made U-turns behind Dennis. The Mustang passed Dennis to get to Fritz. Dennis swerved and skidded into the Blazer, hitting the driver's side door. All that stood between Dennis and Fritz was the front end of the squad car. 10 feet, maybe less. Dennis looked up to see a 9mm submachine gun pointed straight at him, and Fritz wearing dark sunglasses and smiling broadly. Fritz fired the Uzi. 5 bullets hit Dennis's squad car. 2 hit Dennis. 1 struck his chest. The second grazed his belt buckle. During a 30th anniversary article written by Bob Costner in 2015, he interviewed Tommy, who said, quote, "He had the Uzi. He sprayed once, came back, and sprayed twice to make sure he got me," said Dennis. "The bullets came through my windshield, top of my car, and the side of my car." At his wife's insistence, Tommy always wore a bulletproof vest, which did save his life. But the impact of the Uzi shredded the flesh on his chest and shoulder. Dennis was conscious, but in agonizing pain. He said the force of the bullet hitting his vest was like a sledgehammer.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Fritz continued to fire the Uzi indiscriminately, while some of the officers fired back. Civilians and law enforcement alike ducked in their vehicles as the shootout commenced. People at nearby businesses fell to the ground to take cover, while one Kentucky detective took a bullet from Fritz right under his right arm. Fritz appeared boxed in by all the cars, but managed to escape. He pulled the Blazer onto New Garden Road, followed again by lots of police cars. He creeped along at New Garden, then turned onto Battleground Avenue and into Summerfield, slowing several times to fire. Fritz then turned east on North Carolina 150 as residents heard the machine gun fire as Fritz stopped near Bronco Lane. Then, as the officers and civilians watched in disbelief, the Blazer exploded. Debris fell to the ground in a million pieces, obscured by plumes of white smoke. A radio call one of the police officers made from his car marked the timeline, 3:07 p.m. Officers surveyed the area carefully, fearing they might trip other bombs. Most would say they had never seen anything more gruesome. Susie lay in a culvert, her lower body blown apart from the bomb that detonated beneath her. Jim and John were upright in the remains of the Blazer's back seat, and the dog was between them. Fritz was still alive when a Kentucky detective found him in a nearby ditch. Right arm and leg gone. The detective leaned in close to Fritz, hoping to hear his confession or any last words, but all that came from Fritz was gurgling blood, and then he too died. It was discovered that Susie and Fritz believed that her and Tom's families had planned to kidnap and take custody of the boys after they agreed to testify on Tom's behalf in the court case. Investigators wouldn't learn until days later that Jim and John, who were 9 and 10 at the time, were dead when the bomb exploded, poisoned by cyanide and then shot in the head by their mother.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
That's a crime scene photo.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm glad they didn't blow up, but how do you as a mother?
I will never understand. The only thing that I can think of, the only type of crime when it comes to mothers and their children that I can even begin to wrap my head around, and I say that very loosely, are those mercy killings. Now, obviously, I understand that a lot of the time there's mental illness involved. There's, but the only thing that I can wrap my brain around is that a mother thinks that they're killing their child to protect them.
Okay.
Which is not an excuse or a good enough reason. Right. But I can understand.
I get what you're saying. I do. But why couldn't you just... Why did you have to do both? Why did you poison them and shoot them? How could you look at your child point blank and shoot them? Like,
after poisoning them. And, you have to wonder, it never states in here whether, they used the cyanide first and maybe it didn't work.
Right. I don't care.
Or, it doesn't say, it's like, what's the point of poisoning them and then shooting? If your plan in the beginning was to shoot them in the head, why was that not the only plan? What was the point of the cyanide? So you have to think she probably had tried to poison them first. That didn't work for whatever reason. Yeah. On July 31st, 1985, Perkins pleaded guilty to 3 counts of accessory after the fact of murder for these 3 deaths, and he served a 4-month sentence followed by a 5-year probation period. So he did end up pleading guilty to assisting Fritz in killing Susie's mom and her husband, Bob, her mom's husband, and Bob's mom, Hattie. Dr. Tom Lynch retired in 2014 as a dentist in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and continues to decline interviews about the ordeal. Tommy Dennis now works in courthouse security, and during the 30th anniversary interview, he stated, quote, "It's history. People can read it or watch the movie. I just keep working towards the future," unquote. Fritz was buried next to his father, who died a year earlier. The inscription on Fred's senior's headstone reads, quote, "Beloved physician," and Fritz's reads, quote, "Devoted son," unquote. Going into print 11 weeks after the ordeal, Jerry Bledsoe's best-selling book, quote, "Bitter Blood," unquote, tells the story of this obsessive love, incest, and bitter custody battle that connected 3 wealthy families by marriage and left 9 people dead. And in 93, the movie In the Best of Families, directed by Jeff Bleckner, came out based on the book and the events. Unfortunately, the people closest to Fritz and this horrific crime were not his only victims. I'm going to tell you one more story today about a 13-year-old boy named Kerry Loggins, written by Margaret Moffat for the News and Record in 2015. Kerry Loggins wasn't always this way. Withdrawn, solitary, maybe even reclusive. He vaguely remembers a different version of himself. Athletic and engaged, outgoing and fun-loving. But that was so long ago. Kerry, who is now 51, will never know for sure what causes the nightmares, why he's skittish in crowds, why leaving home brings crippling anxiety, but he has an idea. On June 3rd, 1985, a Monday, the 13-year-old boy had stepped off of the school bus in front of his house on NC 150 in Summerfield. Minutes later, he heard an ear-splitting sound, then realized he was laying flat on the ground. A Chevrolet Blazer, driven by Fritz Klenner, who was fleeing from police, had exploded about a football field's length from where Kerry lay. As Kerry ran for cover, these things rained down around him. Things too awful to imagine. Things Loggins cannot forget. Car parts, bomb parts, body parts. In that moment, Kerry's carefree childhood disintegrated. "Everything changed," he said. "It was a terrible summer." Today, we know what caused the subsequent change in his personality: post-traumatic stress. Today, counselors would stand in line to comfort a kid who had witnessed such a horrific event. That was 1985, however, and still some consideration for mental disorders and talk therapy to be psychologically mumbo-jumbo. Kerry remembers some sort of black truck stopped on NC 150 as he walked from the bus to his house. But his focus was elsewhere. Benji, the family dog, heard sirens screaming in the distance and ran off to chase them, so Kerry ran after him. Quote, "I really wasn't paying attention to the truck," he said. "The next thing you know, it blew up," unquote. Kerry picked himself up off the grass and ran, Benji behind him, to alert his elderly neighbor in the absence of his parents. He recollects only flashes of what happened next, memories confirmed by crime scene analysis and interviews with law enforcement officials. The back half of the Blazer sat upright in a horse pasture, and he saw Fritz Klenner in a ditch, and he saw Susie Lynch's torso, all that remained after the bomb exploded underneath her seat. He felt something under his feet and looked down. Was it a kidney? Was it part of an arm? He didn't take time to investigate. He ran home and shut the door behind him. He didn't leave for days. The summer of 85 dragged on. His nightmares were frequent, so vivid he was afraid to sleep in his own room by himself. His mom cleaned the blood from the new white tennis shoes he had on that day. Loggins couldn't bring himself to wear them again. Friends, neighbors, strangers, all good, all well-meaning people, dredged up the event every single day. Things like, quote, "Fritz Klenner was nothing but evil. He killed a bunch of people, and those poor little boys. You saw that, right?" Unquote. And, quote, "He could have killed you, you know? He was shooting everybody that day. Boy, you were lucky," unquote. Only Carrie didn't feel lucky. More like vulnerable, frightened, traumatized. Quote, I had it in my mind that I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see, he said, and I was going to be next, unquote. He gave up baseball that season, and it would turn out every season that followed, along with football and all the other things he once loved. He grew up and got a job, married, and had 2 daughters. His wife, whom he has since divorced, worried that he was too withdrawn, too fearful in social situations. She recommended that Loggins talk to a doctor who might be able to provide answers about his skittish personality. The doctor believed he found the source, Fritz Klenner's blazer exploding 100 yards away. But the knowledge hasn't brought him much comfort. Quote, I don't like to be around people, he said. I don't talk about it. My girlfriend doesn't even know, unquote. Luckily, he said, he spends most days alone in the woods or in a field where he finds moments of peace. So maybe it's time, since Fritz Klenner's reign of terror began, to factor in another victim into the calculus of madness and violence. 9 people dead, 2 families destroyed, 2 officers wounded, and Carrie Loggins scared. Just like the patch of destroyed asphalt in front of his childhood home on NC 150, charred by the bomb and unrepaired. It was there, he said, for what seemed like an eternity. That's 13-year-old Carrie at the crime scene.
Oh my gosh. That's awful.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of include that part in our story today because it kind of dawned on me while I was doing the research. I found that interview, and it kind of dawned on me that, you know, we tell these stories, and as hard as we try to focus on the victims, we always consider the victims to be closely related to the crimes.
Right.
But we forget sometimes about those people who are on the sidelines, who are just as affected of anybody else.
But you don't think about it. You don't think about someone else that might have seen the crime and it affected them like that.
Exactly. And when you look up the story, I mean, through all of my research, you don't find anything about poor Carrie, and that's the thing. He was absolutely a victim. And Fritz didn't even know him. He didn't know Fritz, and it's just amazing how our lives are intertwined the way that they are. And so in our spirit of focusing on the victims, I felt like it was important whenever I found that article to go ahead and expand on it and tell you guys that story too. So
it's all sad. All of it. The story itself is crazy, and
there's obviously mental illness here.
Right. But to know that a 13-year-old who was just simply getting off the bus on a regular day was affected and wasn't even in the situation.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. So that is the story of Fritz and Susie Q.
That was interesting.
Crazy ride, y'all. Crazy ride.
To bring it back to a...
Do we have something happy?
I have some short, funny stories that are supposed to crack you up in less than 60 seconds.
In less than 60 seconds. Should we set a timer?
We can. It might take me longer than that to read, but... First one. Now that's what I call stupid. In my junior year of high school, this guy asked me on a date. He rented a Redbox movie and made a pizza. We were watching the movie, the oven beeped, and the pizza was done. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "This is the worst part." I then watched this boy open the oven, pull the pizza out with his bare hands, rack and all, screaming to the top of his lungs. We never had a second date. What person doesn't know to use
an oven mitt? What do you do when you get pizzas off of the rack? Because I would like to point out that it was just... Okay, so I've
never put a pizza directly on the rack.
Okay, I just started this year. Okay, I have a stone.
Yeah.
A round stone. You can bake cookies on it, all the good stuff. But I normally make my pizza on that. Now, one thing that I learned recently about that stone... Mm-hmm. is you actually have to put it in the oven while it's preheating.
Yes.
Or else the stone does not get hot.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're putting a cold stone with a cold pizza into a hot oven, and it takes longer to cook.
I also have, though, a
Did not
pan
put together those two
that
things.
has the holes on the bottom for a pizza.
That's a good idea.
What I use.
Okay, so that's what you use. Okay, well, I used a pizza stone for Lord knows how long,
So how do you
the
get your pizza
incorrect
out?
way. Well,
Do you take the whole rack out?
I have now ditched the pizza stone because it takes too long if I've got to preheat that thing too.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the directions say to put it right on the rack.
Mm-hmm.
So I've started doing that. And the way that I get it out is I now hold my cold pizza stone and I use a spatula.
Oh.
And I just kind of twist it onto the stove out of the thing. But your little pan with the holes in it is actually a pretty good idea.
Oh, yeah, it works great.
Because it lets the air in there to get the pizza crust all crusty. I like it. I like it. But don't use your bare hands, people, please. Lord have mercy.
Okay. Number 2. The fake report card. I failed the first quarter of class in middle school, so I made a fake report card. I did this every quarter that year. I forgot that they mail home the end-of-year cards. My mom got it before I could intercept with my fake. She was pissed at the school she was pissed at the school for their error.
Oh, Lord.
The teacher also retired that year and had already thrown out his record, so they had to take my mother's proof, the fake ones that I made throughout the year, and correct the mistake. I never told the truth.
So I've been into like graphic design and stuff like that ever since I could walk.
Yeah.
And I never used this to like actually get away with something. But when I got older, like we would go on like a field trip or something and I would like forget to have my mom sign the field trip form and stuff like that. So I ended up scanning my like a document that had my mother's signature on it. And I learned how to just like go in and copy that little portion and put her signature on anything that I needed. And so like I would get a field trip form or something like that and like forget to have her sign it. And then I would just stick it in the copier with her signature and then print out a new one and then turn that one in. I had so much potential that went unused.
I had one main signature of my mom's that I kept.
That you knew was like a good one.
Yep, and I would put the paper over top of it and shine a flashlight on top and trace it.
And trace it, yep. Yeah, I did a lot more technical stuff than that, but...
I wasn't. Number 3. I went to this girl's party the week after she beat the shit out of my friend. While everyone was getting trashed, I went around putting tuna inside all the curtain rods. So, like, weeks went by and they couldn't figure out why the house smelled like festering death. They caught me through this video where these guys at the party were singing Beyonce while I was in the background with a can of tuna.
Oh my God, I love you. That is how you go to bat for a friend. Man, come on. You are the real MVP. Oh, I bet. Good for you. And I love that. Harmless prank. Really, really disgusting. I am down for it.
So in the 8th grade, I used to read a lot during class. At the time, I was reading an Artemis Fowl book. And for some reason, I had 2 copies of the same book. So one day in my English class, we were reading this other book, which I had already finished reading 3 days earlier. And I was reading my own book. And when it was finally my turn to read, I had no idea where we were. So the teacher took my book away. I found my spot, read the part, and passed it to the next person to start reading. So after I read my part, I took out my second copy of Artemis and picked up right where I left off. Skipped a few minutes ahead. Gets back to my turn to read, and again, I don't know where we are. So the teacher takes a look at me, sees the book in my hands, then back at her desk, obviously confused for a second, but shrugs it off, knowing it's me she's dealing with. I've caused similar problems before. Takes my second book and puts it on her desk and makes me read my part. Now my friend that sits 2 chairs from me was also reading Artemis at the same time as me. And with a quick look to him, he knew exactly what I was planning. He took it out, passed it over without hesitation. I opened it to a random spot and just pretended like I was reading. At this point, it was just to mess with my teacher. So skip forward again. My teacher sees me with the book and again says, "How many of those do you have?" I gave my smart-ass remark as enough. She took that book away too. But now at this point, I was out of books, and the rest of my class knew it. But the teacher didn't know I was out. So she continued with her lesson, and another friend of mine took 2 of her books, switched out 2 of the Artemis books on her desk to make it look like they were still there. He passed the books slowly around the room, one at a time, until they were back at me. Then I took one out, opened to a random spot, and just kept it open, waiting to get caught. I silently signaled for a few people in the class, and they started laughing. The teacher looked at what they were laughing at and saw me yet with another book. She looked at her desk where she seemingly 3 Artemis books and saw me with a 4th. She took it, walked back to her desk, put it down, turned around, and saw me with the 2nd book that I got taken back on my desk. The teacher thought she was going to win this game, but underestimated my teamwork with my classmates. So the second she came over to me to take the seemingly 5th book, another classmate took back the other 2 books from the desk and split them up, sending one my way and the other way.
Oh my gosh, this is some epic teamwork going on right now.
The teacher was flustered and laughing hysterically at this point, and there was no more teaching going on. The entire class was also going ballistic, trying to see who could win. It was just a game of how many books does this 8th grader have. So at the end of the class, she thought she had taken 11 books from me. I took pity on her and told her what was really happening.
Oh.
I told her that I had already read the 1st book and all the teamwork that had went on. We were both laughing and making jokes. In the end, she agreed to let me read my own books as long as I kept track of the actual book we were reading.
Oh, no. That was so great. Oh, that was epic teamwork. Again, a fun, harmless prank. Love it. Well, we hope that you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you guys in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Definitely send in any funny stories that you guys have. Obviously, we found these on the internet, but if you guys have any really funny personal stories, there is a form on our website. So if you go over there to www.sipsofcrime.com, you'll find the stories submission form. And we would love to share some of y'all's funny stories as well on our podcast. So we hope that you guys have a great week, and we will talk to you soon. Bye! You can join our freaky family both on Instagram and Facebook and find all of the featured photos from this episode at Sips of Crime.
Check out our website, www.sipsofcrime.com. There you can get to know a little about us and stay up to date with our monthly newsletter. We love connecting with our listeners and enjoy sharing your personal true crime, paranormal, or just downright funny stories. So submit those through the form provided on the website.
You can also help us grow our freaky family by sharing the podcast with others. And of course, let's not forget rocking our merch.
Thanks for listening.
Stay alive.